Life has countless mysteries. Did Oswald act alone? Are UFOs real? We have views on those. We'll save them for future shows. But tonight, one mystery has been solved. For months, Homedale High School in New Jersey was plagued by somebody relieving himself on the football field, doing the full German Shepherd. Police set up surveillance system. Monday morning, they got their man. It was the superintendent himself, Thomas Tragalini. We've been telling you for months the rot is deep in schools, and there's your proof. That's it for us. Show Hannity from New York City. All right, Tucker, great show as always, and welcome to Hannity. President Trump's attorney, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, made massive news right here on this program last night. Now, he took James Comey to task. He said crooked Hillary ought to be in jail. He slammed Mueller's out-of-control witch hunt. He took James Comey to task and so much more. But tonight, this abusively biased news media in this country, they only cared about one 30-second clip. We had a 40-minute interview, all making news. Now, this, of course, regarding the revelation surrounding Stormy. Now, in moments, we're going to show you just how insane, ridiculous the anti-Trump media and their echo chamber has now become in this country. Plus, we have breaking developments tonight over the FBI's investigation into Michael Cohen. Earlier today, fake news, NBC reporting the FBI wiretapped Trump's longtime personal attorney. Well, now we're learning that much of that story was fake. We'll explain coming up. And finally, we have a massive development out of North Korea. While the media is howling at the moon over Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels and Russia, they're visibly yawning over the report that 3 of our fellow Americans that were imprisoned by Kim Jong-un, they may soon be released. Now, sit tight. We've got this and so much more in tonight's important breaking news opening monologue. All right, last night, right here on this program, we did something you don't often see from so-called journalists. Yeah, we actually broke news. Now, our lengthy interview with Rudy Giuliani covered a wide range of topics. It unearthed a lot of important insight into the Trump legal team, including this moment when the former New York City mayor, now President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, called out Robert Mueller's pathetic witch hunt. Take a look. The president's right when he says witch hunt?
Yeah, sure. You can't explain this any other way. First of all, there never should have been an investigation. There was no Russian collusion. We're now a year and a half, 2 years into this no Russian collusion, case over. In falling all over themselves to investigate him, they have committed numerous violations.
Now, Giuliani did not stop there. He also slammed the special counsel's questions to President Trump, the ones recently leaked to the fake news New York Times. Take a look at this.
When you look at those questions about what does the president think, what does the president feel, what does the president really desire, those are all questions intended to trap him in some way in contradicting what is, in fact, a very, very solid explanation of what happened.
Now, the former mayor is absolutely right. And breaking tonight, while Robert Mueller sets a perjury trap for President Trump, the special counsel has filed a request for 70 blank subpoenas in the case of Paul Manafort. In other words, Mueller now has the power to subpoena dozens of Americans so long as he writes a name on the paper before he serves the documents. Wow, this is interesting. We'll analyze all of that, what is seemingly an aggressive legal tactic and one that we would expect from him. But first, more news from my sit-down with the former mayor, including these comments that he made, the media paid little attention to. Pay attention now about Hillary Clinton. Take a look.
13 crimes she committed, and we got up to about 18. I'm sorry, Hillary. I know you're very disappointed you didn't win, but you're a criminal. Equal justice would mean you should go to jail. I do not know why the Justice Department is not investigating you.
Equal justice would mean Hillary goes to jail. Now, Giuliani also took on the disgraced former FBI Director James Comey. Let's watch this.
You have an investigation in which Mueller is selected the day after he's turned down for FBI Director by Rosenstein, who was there when Mueller was turned down. There are thousands of people that could have been selected for that job. Also a friend of James Comey, and James Comey seems to be the core of their investigation. He's telling the truth, the president isn't. I know James Comey, I know the president. Sorry, Jim, you're a liar, a disgraceful liar. Every FBI agent in America has his head down because of you.
A disgraceful liar. Now, the former mayor also slammed the wrong. Now, this doesn't change the fact that President Trump did not initially know about the payment or that the purpose of the payment took place. It doesn't change the fact that Michael Cohen took this action to benefit the company that he served as vice president and attorney for. Trump, well, he said this aboard Air Force One. Take a look.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels? Then why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no truth around it?
Well, you have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael is my attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael.
Do you know where he got the money to make that payment?
No, I don't know.
And I meant when he's president. Now, the president, he obviously knew about the story at this time. It had been so widely reported since January. What he was saying is he didn't know about the payment prior to the story being covered. Now, of course, this did not stop the mainstream media and their hysteria from reaching yet another fever pitch like the Russia story that they have no evidence on. Take a look.
Good evening, Rachel, and I have to confess I did not watch all of your show tonight because Rudy Giuliani went on the other network, went on Fox News, and he stayed on longer than he should have because that's when he got to the Stormy Daniels admission, which is gigantic, which is blockbuster.
They thought he could be someone out there publicly defending the president and also someone who would take a harder line when it came to the Mueller investigation, but he seems to have just created another mess.
There seems to be a basic assumption that Rudy Giuliani had a strategy of some sort at all. And I just remain unconvinced at this point that that's the case.
If Rudy Giuliani had been, let's say, counsel for IBM and delivered a performance that undercut IBM like he did last night for the President of the United States, he'd be fired the next morning.
In many ways, you know, the hero of 9/11 is almost being forgotten. He's severely damaged his legacy.
What do you make of Giuliani's legal strategy here?
Well, I liken it to a murder-suicide. He metaphorically murdered the president and committed suicide with respect to his own reputation.
The 24-hour nonstop coverage was so constant, so obsessive, so outrageous. Well, it's actually almost funny, except it's too serious. But take a look.
We'll begin with that stunning revelation from President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani. Last night, telling Fox News that Trump reimbursed his fixer, Michael Cohen.
This was a stunning admission that Giuliani overnight says was approved by his boss, the president, offering a completely contradictory account about that payment to Stormy Daniels.
After saying he did not know anything about the hush money payments to an adult film actress who said they had sex, now he says he reimbursed his lawyer for making those payments.
Startling admission by Rudy Giuliani leaves President Trump facing new legal questions this morning about whether he knew about an attempt to silence Stormy Daniels.
How many times have I said journalism in America is dead? It's almost unbelievable, but it's all too predictable. The media just cannot stop playing this show, meaning Hannity, and the interviews that we conduct. It seems like they're featuring me more than their own hosts. Now, I'm beginning to think at this point, maybe I need to start collecting a paycheck from ABC, CBS, NBC, fake news CNN, and the conspiracy theory network MSNBC. And you know what? Because I'm providing the real news that they rarely make on their own. Now, let's turn to even more fake news. Earlier today, and this is serious, NBC broke a big story, a serious story about Michael Cohen. Okay, according to the original report, Cohen had been wiretapped weeks before the FBI raided his home and office and his hotel room. And there was even more damning developments from NBC News. Take a look at their report.
This wiretap occurred several weeks before the now public search warrant that was executed here in New York several weeks ago. In addition to that, we've learned that at least one phone call conversation between a line belonging to Michael Cohen and the White House was also intercepted. We know from court papers, federal prosecutors have already said that they conducted covert surveillance of Michael Cohen's emails leading up to the search warrant being executed. So this is a lot more than just knocking on the door and asking for some documents.
And now we're learning that a major component of this report was once again fake news. Now, NBC was forced to issue a, quote, correction that reads in part, quote, 3 senior U.S. officials now dispute the wiretapping, saying that the monitoring of Cohen's phones was limited to a log of calls known as a pen register, not a wiretap where investigators can actually listen to the calls. Yet again, fake news from NBC. Now, while the media is busy reporting all the fake news about Michael Cohen and spinning in circles over a small, tiny portion of my 40-minute interview with Rudy Giuliani, well, we have actual news about the lives of 3 of our fellow Americans long held hostage by North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. In other words, Little Rocket Man. President Trump is currently working on their release and is hinting of some very hopeful news on Twitter. He wrote, as everybody's aware, the past administration has long been asking for 3 hostages to be released from a North Korean labor camp, but to no avail. Stay tuned. Now, this is just one new positive development from the Korean Peninsula that is seeing now tremendous progress under our new president. Now, let's break this down. 3 American lives are at stake. Your mainstream media is yawning, paying very little attention. Kim Jong-un is making unprecedented concessions. The mainstream media is yawning. We're talking about denuclearization of the entire Korean Peninsula. We have historically low unemployment now in 14 states, record lows. The media yawns. Americans receiving unemployment is the lowest since 1973. The media could care less. African-American unemployment, Hispanic unemployment, women in the workforce unemployment, 17-year lows, record lows. The media could care less. Do you need any more proof that the news media in this country does not care about the truth, about doing their job, about you? They care about their liberal, left-wing, pathetic agenda. And they're like one big, huge, massive echo chamber with a bunch of overpaid, spoiled brat anchors that don't do their job. Joining us now, former U.S. Attorney Joe DeGenova. For full disclosure, as always, he has done some legal work for me in the past. He and his wife, Victoria, attended my radio show Christmas party, and we did share drinks together, and we talked and we laughed. Good to see you, sir.
You too.
You know, so much news was made in that interview.
Indeed.
And you saw the coverage. Let's start there. Your reaction. What does it say? What does it say to the American consumer about the news industry in general in this country?
Well, I think when you take a look at the White House Correspondents' Dinner and the conduct of the people there, and when you look at the absence of coverage of something so major as your show last night, it's pretty clear, Sean, that you're right. American journalism is dead. It's dying. It's in a coffin. And the fact is, these people are not journalists anymore. They're people with an agenda. They want to prove something. They don't want to find something out. They want to say something on their own. And this is an example of it. It's really a sad day, a sad, sad day.
Joe, we've had massive surveillance abuse,
yes.
Unmasking abuse. We've had the leaking of raw intelligence, Samantha Power unmasking a person a day. And then we have the bigger scandal. Rudy Giuliani is right. Hillary committed felonies. Hillary obstructed justice. James Comey, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Andrew McCabe, and Loretta Lynch, they rigged that investigation. Then, of course, there's supposed to be Trump-Russia collusion. It turns out Hillary is paying a foreign national to use Russian sources that turn out to be debunked, and then that false political document, that dossier, is used for a FISA warrant to spy on an American associated with the Trump campaign in the lead-up to an election. They're virtually silent on the biggest abuse of power scandal in the history of the country.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that judgment you've just made is absolutely correct. It is quite evident now that the Mueller probe is illegitimate. This effort to attempt to interview the President of the United States has now reached the point where there's just no doubt at all that the President should refuse to be interviewed by them. And that's because it's clear that that Mueller and his team of Democratic thugs are acting in bad faith. They know that the president, under Department of Justice rules, cannot be indicted. They have no evidence to indict him. The office of Robert Mueller was created by Rod Rosenstein illegally. There, he mentioned no crime to be investigated. All of this leads to the ultimate conclusion that the perpetuation of this investigation by Mueller is doing grave damage to the United States. It's doing grave damage to United States foreign policy. It's doing grave damage to U.S. law enforcement because of the thug-like tactics that have been used in the Manafort case and in the Cohen case. And it points to something that really is disturbing. After watching the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Rod Rosenstein, accuse Congress of trying to extort him and others in the department by conducting legitimate constitutional oversight, I would say that between Mueller and Rosenstein and the absent Attorney General, God bless him, we have a very serious crisis in American federal law enforcement.
Oh, I agree. And I think it's the biggest abuse of power, corruption scandal in our history. Let's stay on Rod Rosenstein a second. Rod Rosenstein wrote a letter, said the FBI could never recover if James Comey stayed at the helm. So he would be a witness on that part of it.
Correct.
We've also discovered that Rod Rosenstein, we talk about the FISA applications that relied on unverified, uncorroborated, a dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton. They never told the judge it was paid for by Hillary. And then he went on to say that if there are false information presented to a FISA court, there's serious consequences. Isn't he implicating himself, that same statement when he said that he's not going to be extorted?
Of course. The problem here for Rod Rosenstein is he has multiple conflicts of interest. He shouldn't be supervising this case. He wrote the memorandum that led to the firing of James Comey. He signed the FISA applications. He continues to know and personally care about Comey and Mueller and others. He should be removed from this case. This is absolutely disgraceful. And now he will pretend that he is above all of this. But when all is said and done, Mr. Rosenstein represents a part of the department that I thought we had lost a long time ago when the Obama administration people left office, but apparently they haven't left office.
Joe, we're headed for a showdown, and that is every attorney that I know says the president should never sit with Robert Mueller, Andrew Weissman, his pit bull with his atrocious track record, his team of Democratic donors only. And if the showdown goes down and the president says no, if they won't agree to proffer written answers to legitimate questions, which I don't think they will at this point, then that means that it's likely that Robert Mueller will then subpoena the president of the United States before a grand jury. This is where it gets somewhat legally a little bit tricky. Let's walk down that road. What happens when, and what should the response be?
Well, first of all, I think that if Mueller issued a subpoena to the president, it would be an unconstitutional subpoena. Since he knows the president cannot be indicted, and since he knows that the president is not a necessary witness to anything that he is investigating, it is clear that he would be using the grand jury subpoena for only one reason: to get testimony from the president to use in an impeachment recommendation report to the Deputy Attorney General. That is an illegal use of a grand jury subpoena. The president should resist it. They should take it all the way to the Supreme Court, because under Article 2 of the Constitution, all executive power rests in the President of the United States. He had ultimate authority to fire James Comey, and he did.
And if
Mueller
the courts make the wrong decision,
of course, the courts can always be wrong.
We know that.
But it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court if he issues a subpoena. Let me make a prediction. Mueller will never issue a subpoena.
Why?
Because he cannot win. I disagree with some of the comments of Judge Napolitano earlier about the fact that Mueller will win ultimately on a subpoena. Let me just say this. Mueller will lose ultimately on a subpoena because it is unconstitutional.
If it was
illegal.
Granted and the president pled the fifth, then they would offer him immunity, and then the perjury trap remains. Correct or not?
That is technically correct, but You cannot issue immunity to someone when you are doing it illegally under the statute, because the only reason he would be giving him immunity would be to force testimony for an impeachment report. Mueller does not have the authority to issue an impeachment report, and he does not have the authority to use a grand jury subpoena to get presidential testimony for impeachment or any other criminal activity that never occurred, because he's dealing with the power of the president to fire people. So if Mueller wants to have that fight and tie it up in the courts for 6 months to a year, he can do it, but he will be doing a grave disservice to himself, because at this point, Mueller has become a cross between Madame Defarge and Inspector Javert, and it's an embarrassment.
All right, Joe DeGenova, always appreciate you being on the program. All right, when we come back, things are just getting started. Dan Bongino, Sebastian Gorka, they're coming up. And also, don't miss them, the great one, Mark Levin, weighing in. He has a lot to say tonight as we continue.
I know James Comey. I know the president. Sorry, Jim, you're a liar, a disgraceful liar. Every FBI agent in America has his head down because of you. This has become a witch hunt, like the president said. And if you look at those questions that are being asked, they're trap questions. A first-year prosecutor would do better than that.
What were you thinking about James Comey, Jeff Sessions, and the special counsel? You're allowed to have thoughts. You can't criminalize thoughts. That's how idiotic that list of questions was. Anyway, that was more of my interview from last night with Rudy Giuliani. The media continues to distort every aspect of this interview. Look at, for example, Joyless Behar on The View. She went off the rails yet again today.
I'll take a psychological position. I think that Giuliani is unconsciously throwing him under the bus because he didn't make him the attorney general or the chief of staff there. Oh. That's what's going on. Well, yeah, but Giuliani loves to be the center of attention. When Bill Bratton was on the cover of Time magazine because he cleaned up crime in the city, he was fired very shortly thereafter because Giuliani wanted to get. That's Giuliani.
Really? But
yes.
You're not.
I'm giving you a tip, Trump.
Hold on.
He's out to get you.
That's Joy Behar. She's not a genius. And obviously, she didn't watch the full interview because Rudy Giuliani said on the program last night he was offered the job and he regretted turning it down. They want to pay attention. Anyway, joining us now with reaction, former deputy assistant to the president, Fox News national security strategist Sebastian Gorka, NRA TV contributor, former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino. Let's start with you, Dr. Gorka. It's a pretty fundamental thing. All the things that the mayor said last night, the president's attorney said last night about Hillary, about Mueller, about Comey, about the investigation. Huge news that he's making here. And they focus on 30 seconds because that's where the corrupt media goes. They don't want to hear the truth.
First things first, Sean, I have to congratulate you because you're getting close to the president's record for living rent-free in the mind of the liberal left media. They're obsessed with you. They're obsessed with you. And I like how they spent the whole day, I followed it all day, how they selected one half a sentence from the mayor's statement on your show, but they missed the beginning where he said, amongst other things, that's the reason why he was fired. These people haven't even passed year one in journalism school, and they have to maintain a narrative. It's like those 49 questions. Those 49 questions are a mark of desperation. There is no case, there is no conclusion, so 3/4 of those questions are about trying to police your thought. We only do that in dictatorships. We don't do that in America, Sean.
Yeah, and by the way, these are the actual questions. What did you think about Comey's testimony? What did you think about Sessions' recusal? What did you think about the appointment of a special counsel? It doesn't matter what he thought. No. It matters what he did. And the fact that goes over their head, on the one hand, it infuriates me. On the other hand, I got to laugh. Dan Bongino, look at this, that Rudy Giuliani, the president's attorney, talked about how Mueller's questions are a perjury trap. He talked about Comey, we just played it, being a disgraceful liar, and how the probe is tainted. He talked about how Hillary's a criminal, belongs in jail, and that Comey fixed the entire case with Hillary. Then he talked about how Comey should be prosecuted for leaking confidential information. None of that, for the most part, is covered today. But the only thing they cover is Stormy, and they even got that wrong.
Well, Sean, they're invested in this now. They can't get away from the Russia hoax. They're embedded in this. They've sold it to us for a year. But, Sean, this is a case built by liars for liars. The three liars, Clapper, Brennan, and Comey. They built this on a bed of lies, this collusion hoax, for liars up on Capitol Hill and people in the media that had to obstruct the Trump presidency with a fake collusion hoax. This is nonsense. And on the topic of the question, Sean, let me just tell you, when I was a Secret Service agent, I went to a very sophisticated advanced interrogation school. They actually came into our training center. One of the things they always taught us when you're trying to get people into a trap in an interview is ask open-ended questions. In other words, don't ask, is your name Sean Hannity? You're just going to say yes. An open-ended question would be, well, what's your name? Because if you're involved in an identity theft case, you may slip up and actually give the wrong name. That's what they're trying to do. Do not do this interview. It is a huge mistake. It's a trap.
What do you think, Sebastian, to that very point?
The president, right now, I've been saying this from the beginning, should never ever sit down. Joe, Victoria are right. They have no right to do this. The president cannot be indicted. At the end of the day, this is a perjury trap. Nothing more, nothing less. This man wants a scalp. Mueller wants a scalp, and along with Comey and McCabe, they have destroyed the reputation of the FBI. I'm getting texts today from FBI agents saying they record every meeting they go to now because jurors no longer believe them.
Sad.
3 men have destroyed
the FBI. By the way, it's not
FBI.
them. I will never sweep with a broad brush here. This is a few at the top, not the rank and file. And Dan, you've worked with these guys. We know how great they are.
They're great. Yeah, they're terrific. But, Sean, listen to me, guys. They have nothing. Do you understand Mueller has nothing? You can't fabricate collusion that didn't happen. This isn't Back to the Future with Marty McFly. There's nothing here, Sean. So what do they have? All they have is process crimes, lying to the FBI, and a perjury trap. They have nothing.
When you think for the president of the United States, you would think they'd put the country first here. But for them to succeed, this president has to fail.
Sean. It's about them. It's not about America.
That is sad. And if we lose, this is Venezuela. It's not the United States. When we come back, the great one, Mark Levin. You do not want to miss this. And Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, straight ahead. All right, as Mueller's witch hunt continues, you might remember the great one, Mark Levin, right here on this show last summer, explaining the DOJ policy that says a sitting president cannot be indicted. This is something the media kind of forgets. Take a look.
It's been the position of the United States Department of Justice under Republicans and Democrats in a 1973 memorandum and an October memorandum under the Clinton administration that you cannot indict a sitting president. Not that this president would be, that's not my point. As a matter of constitutional interpretation, for 44 years, that's been the position of the Department of Justice. We've had law professors, homeless people, would-be law professors all over TV and radio talking about obstruction of justice. We've had media types talking about it. We've had members of Congress talking about it. It doesn't matter. The official position of the Justice Department is we don't charge a sitting president with a crime.
Now, Mark reiterated that point on this show just a few weeks ago. You may remember.
A sitting president's amenability to indictment and criminal prosecution. The indictment or criminal prosecution of a sitting president would unconstitutionally undermine the capacity of the executive branch to perform its constitutionally assigned functions. Page after page after page saying a sitting United States president cannot be indicted. Now, my question is this. Did they issue another memo over there at the Justice Department reversing these two memos during the Nixon administration and the Clinton administration? No.
He joins us himself with reaction. The host of CRTV's Levin TV, the host of Life, Liberty, and Levin, the #1 show, Sunday nights, 10 Eastern, right here on the Fox News Channel. I call him the Great One. Mark Levin, I wanted to play that again because, as usual, on legal matters, you're ahead of the curve. You are a constitutional attorney, and our lazy, overpaid liberal activists that call themselves journalists are wrong like 99% of the time. So I want to go through this legally tonight and give you the opportunity to explain it to them yet again.
All right, Sean. This is not me speaking. This is the Department of Justice speaking. And the position of the Justice Department has not been repealed and has not been amended since the last decision on October 16, 2000. The President of the United States, this is getting way too complicated and unnecessarily so. You've got a lot of second-tier slip-and-fall lawyers all over TV spewing things they don't know. They don't understand the Constitution. They haven't studied the cases. I have. First of all, this opinion says, among other things, that grand juries and prosecutors cannot supplant Congress. They cannot supplant Congress. The only way to remove a sitting president is through the impeachment process, not through the indictment process. They cannot disable or hamstring a presidency, which is what they're trying to do as I speak. A prosecutor cannot trigger the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment is the purpose is not to be triggered by a prosecutor, and he can't step in and try and take advantage of it. These are things that were discussed. The president cannot properly defend himself in litigation under the Constitution as an individual American when he has time that he has to spend on official duties. Unlike so many other individuals, a president of the United States, they point out, is so unique in our constitutional system that it is enormously damaging to him because he can't focus on his defense, which is different than civil litigation, and he can't focus during that time on the nation's security and well-being. And the presidency can't function properly with these kinds of burdens. This is what the memo says. He cannot be indicted as a sitting president, period. This is why, despite all the pablum about, well, presidents have received subpoenas before, tell me, name one president who's ever been before a federal grand jury. There's never been a president in front of a federal grand jury. Ken Starr's team subpoenaed Bill Clinton for having, among other things, not sex so much with an intern in the Oval Office, but lying about litigation that was taking place. And he was subpoenaed, and he decided to do a video. So here's my advice to the President of the United States, who didn't seek it, and to his lawyers. Focus. You're making this too complicated. The Constitution is on the side of the President. The Department of Justice's own position, which you can brief yourselves, is on the side of the President of the United States. Historical precedent is on the side of the President of the United States. Legal precedent is on the side of the President of the United States. Stop listening to all the babbling, pleading the fifth, and should he sit down with a subpoena? I would say, if I were the President's lawyer to Mr. Mueller, we want you to present us with an explanation of your defiance of the Department of Justice policy, which you are required to follow as an employee of the Department of Justice. Moreover, we want to understand how it is that you believe that you can burden a president like this while he's in office. And while I'm at it, Sean, we seem to have a few Republicans in the Senate who are very confused about these things, who have voted to protect Mr. Mueller rather than protect the office of the presidency, the Constitution, and the American people. And they seem to think that they have the power, even though we have separation of powers, to tell a president who he can hire and who he can fire. The part of the problem the president has is he's dealing with ignoramuses, both inside his party and outside his party, and some of whom are dressed up as lawyers. So I would take this all the way to the United States Supreme Court. I would make Mueller and his band of Democrat prosecutors make their case all the way to the United States Supreme Court. If they try to subpoena him in any way to appear before a federal grand jury, and make them make their case against their own Department of Justice, against Supreme Court precedent, and against the Constitution of the United States. And if it takes 6 months, it takes 6 months. And if it takes 6 years, then by God, it takes 6 years. We're not just talking about the president, which would be enough. We're talking about protecting the office of the presidency, separation of powers. And when you look at those 49 areas of questions, there's not a single criminal statute. There's not a single obstruction. What has been obstructed? They're not investigating Russia? What is it that they're not investigating that they don't want to investigate? No. They want to know his intent on whether he obstructed. They want to treat him like they treated Martha Stewart. Well, guess what? He's the president, Mr. Mueller. This isn't one of your failed anthrax cases or one of your failed Whitey Bulger cases. This is the president of the United States. You know what that means? We, the people, have a stake in this. We, the people, get to decide. The framers decided the only way you remove a president is through the body politic, through the House and the Senate, and it's a heavy burden, not by some rogue prosecutor with a bunch of Democrat prosecutors. They don't get to do it, and the people need to rise up and demand that this go all the way to the Supreme Court to put these rogue prosecutors in their place.
That's why I call you the Great One. This abusively, politically biased, and frankly, ethically challenged Mueller team. There's the answer. Mark Levin, every Sunday night, 10 Eastern, Life, Liberty, Levin. Thank you, sir. Always good to have you. When we come back, Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, they weigh in on some breaking news straight ahead.
I'm sorry, Hillary. I know you're very disappointed you didn't win, but you're a criminal. Equal justice would mean you should go to jail. I do not know why the Justice Department is not investigating you.
Did James Comey
fix the whole case again?
It was rigged.
Well, you can't read that stupid report that he wrote, which is the beginning of his destruction, in which he says we're not going to prosecute. No reasonable prosecutor would indict her. No honest, reasonable prosecutor wouldn't indict her.
All right, that was the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, on this program last night. Yeah, talking about Hillary Clinton. Hillary is a criminal, and Comey fixed the whole case. Oh, that's pretty big news. Joining us now with reaction, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, the author of the soon-to-be-released book. Look at it right there. Already the liberals are attacking it. They haven't read it yet. The Russia hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Now, this whole issue of allowing the president to talk to Mueller, Rudy said first thing, there's not a lawyer in the country that advises that.
No, because Mueller has proven that he cannot be fair and neutral and objective. Why would you subject your client, the president of the United States, to somebody who has every intent of being unfair to you? So my recommendation would be if Mueller will not accept answers to a limited number of written questions, then let Mueller subpoena the president in front of a grand jury, and then I would ignore the subpoena. Why? Because Mueller would then have to move to hold the president in contempt, which would eventually mean detention or arrest. That would be unconstitutional. The framers wrote that. The Supreme Court has confirmed that would be unconstitutional. An inferior, unelected officer may not remove the president.
Why is everyone making such a big deal about it? He doesn't have to do a thing.
Well, because I think they misunderstand, in part because they think that President Clinton complied with the subpoena. He didn't. The subpoena was actually withdrawn by mutual consent, and it was relative to a civil case, not a criminal case.
Very, very different. And all the while, which we've been pointing out, all of this other news, Sarah, a lot of it corroborating your hard work as an investigative journalist, you know, beyond the fact that Mueller's setting a perjury trap. But Comey's a disgraceful liar. Greg has talked about it. I've talked about it. You have talked about that. Mueller's probe is tainted. Hillary is a criminal. It all begins with Hillary. It all begins with 18 U.S.C. 793 and the Espionage Act, then the obstruction, which was represented by deleting subpoenaed emails, acid washing our hard drive, and beating up your devices with a hammer, and Strzok and Comey and McCabe and Loretta Lynch and others put the fix in the exoneration before the investigation.
Absolutely, and Rudy Giuliani was right on the mark. Look, we know that Michael Horowitz is going to release a report very soon on Comey's handling of the very soon. I would imagine within weeks. He will he's waited. Look, he's waited for Comey to begin talking. He's listening to what he says. He's going to be listening to that to include it in the report. And all we have to do is look back, Sean. All we have to do is look back and realize that from the very beginning, remember, it was May 9th, so it's almost a year to this date when Comey was fired. When Comey was fired by who? None other than Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who advised the president to fire him. And what did he cite in his memorandum? He cited the Clinton investigation, saying how it just completely destroyed the FBI. He even put quotes in there from former FBI directors, from intelligence directors, really hammering on Comey and his handling of the case. I can tell you this, Horowitz is going to have a scathing report against Comey. Comey knows it's coming out. That's why he's lawyered up.
Who
and he
else
has
is
a lot
likely
of
to be
problems.
mentioned?
Oh, Andrew McCabe, certainly. I would
Bruce
imagine
Orr?
that Peter Strzok, and Lisa Page, Bruce Orr. So there's going to be a very intensive
Loretta
investigation.
Lynch?
Yes, absolutely, Loretta Lynch. She was a big part of all of this.
What about, and I'll throw this to Greg, what about people like Clapper and Brennan? Brennan, really, I took it as a threat, stay tuned to the President of the United States.
Well, I think Brennan and to some extent Clapper were the two instigators of the phony
By the way,
dossier.
didn't they both lie under oath?
Well, one can argue that Clapper certainly did
Twice.
got away with it, and statute of limitations is run.
But there's a
on that.
Well,
there could be, but look, they were the instigators, but those who I think very clearly should be prosecuted under felony statutes would include James Comey at the top of the list and Andrew McCabe.
Will we hear about Susan Rice? Will we hear about Ben Rhodes, Sarah? Will we hear about Samantha Powers basically unmasking an American a day?
I hope we do hear about Samantha Powers. I don't know if we're going to hear about all the players, but I do have one thing to say, Sean. Brennan was in charge of the CIA. The CIA is supposed to deal exclusively with foreign issues. What is Brennan doing, involving himself in what is FBI issues and our nation's security issues that have nothing to do with foreign issues? We should be asking Brennan, why are you involving yourself in this? This is not the purview of the CIA.
All right, thank you both. Good luck with the book. We'll be following Hillary Clinton's latest excuse on why she lost next.